Hello everyone, this is Sundar Krishnan, and I'm a cybersecurity professional and also a doctoral student at Samson State University. And on behalf of Dr. Joe and from myself, we would like to be presenting the work that we have recently completed, titled as Predicting Crime Scene Location Details for First Responders. Um, this slide that you see right now aptly describes who first responders are, and we have probably encountered them in our daily lives in some way or the other. And this work is all about trying to predict location details for such teams so that they can better perform their work and be safe and so on. So without much further ado, let me start explaining our work. When we talk about first responders, who they are. So first responders are personnel across various disciplines, and they are highly skilled people who are trained to respond to an emergency or a crime scene. And they're often the primary line of defense for communities across the world. When they're responding to evolving spectrum of natural and man-made disasters or threats or crimes, the spotlight on these people or these teams has greatly evolved due to various television shows and movies and so on. Like we do see police, shows about police response or about investigations like CSI and various such programs on the television or the movies. And we often think that this work is pretty glamorous and it's easy, and investigations are pretty easy, responses like straightforward. But in real life, it's not such a way. These teams often need to respond to real serious incidences, and it's not a cookie cutter kind of work that they all do across the globe. So, what do these teams really do, and how do they go about? Uh, at a very high level, the initial action or reaction is to respond. So they respond, triage, perform first aid, CPR, and so on. Well, the secondary duties or secondary action could be to evacuate the victims or contain a scene, coordinate with other teams, investigate, collect evidence, and so on. Their primary goals often is to save life, human life. The secondary goals may be to save property or other forms of life. So I'd also like to highlight other teams that we may encounter in our cities or in locations across the globe, such as military personnel. We also have bomb disposal squads, the hazmat teams, the public work department who come to check on any broken pipes or anything, even the aviation units or even the K9 units and so on. So all of these teams are first responders. And this service is very important. And they, as I said earlier, their primary goal is to save human life. So moving on, when we talk about a scene, what is the scene? It's a geographic location of an emergency or of a crime, like a house, a parking lot, office building, and so on. And how is it often determined? Well, the callers usually, the people who call into a hotline like a 911 or 100 number like 100, 200, depending on the country, location, or city that we are all. We do have some hotline numbers, and people often, concerned citizens or tourists or whoever it is, lay people call in these numbers and try to alert the people across of an emergency or a crime. The people across the phone call are the dispatchers, the people who take these calls, who respond. They're also trained, and they're also part of the first responding teams because they do take these calls, they handle them, they network with the other teams, they call in the required personnel to respond based upon information that the caller is giving on the phone call. It's often a phone call, and also the various police patrols, they call in, and various vigilant citizens call in. So this is how usually the information is passed on at the very beginning of the whole activity. So if more information was passed about location, what can really be of much use? Well, very often the people calling in this 911, for example, they say probably, hey, there's an emergency at the street, or I'm at close to that building, or I'm close to a park. They probably can't give a lot of information because they're probably victims of the whole problem, or they are calling in a hurry. They're kind of probably not well prepared to give information. They may be tourists. We don't know who they are. So, well, these teams who are responding can be better prepared if they have more information. And sometimes more information is even passed on to these teams as they travel to the scene of incident. So the logistics and parking of these teams, when they have any vehicles to park, like a fire tender, it's much more beneficial for the firefighters if they can know exactly if the incident is on the right side of the property, or the north side or the south side of the property, if it is on that entrance, or some kind of location inside the building or outside the building, so they can appropriately park their equipment or the fire tenders and so on. So logistics play can really be a much more planned for if more information is given. And also they can really improve coordination between themselves and improve, and also they can also be much safer if they have more details before they head into the particular incident. So we did do quite a lot of background research in this area before we started to work on this book. We did check out quite a lot of other publications, but we did find that there was a gap in predicting this crime scene location details, such as inside or outside premises. And also, not to forget, there's quite a lot of handbooks and manuals for these teams to respond. We also looked into all of them. I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them, because there were so many manuals, and they are at various levels of state, federal, and so on. So the manuals are for teams that are at various levels of the society. So these books do have a lot of standard operating procedures, but they didn't much have details about location details and all that. So anyway, we did some background research in the academic world, and we just found this gap was a pretty glaring gap in this field. So that's why we started working on it. So we used machine learning, and we went on to use supervised learning, which when we train a machine using data that's well labeled, and in our case, we did have location details well labeled, and this was already tagged with the correct labels, so we could use supervised learning. And we went on to use logistic regression analysis, which is a type of predictive modeling technique, which investigates the relationship between dependent target and an independent variable. And regression analysis is often used for forecasting, problems, time series modeling, predictions, and establishing the cause and effect relationship between variables, and so on. Various measures such as accuracy, precision, recall, false positive rates, false negative rates, etc., can be all computed. And also a confusion matrix can be plotted here for a binary classifier. So if we have enough data on first responders, and we did have in this case, we can leverage machine learning and the statistical analysis techniques to solve these problems pertaining to their areas. So the data set that we used was from Baltimore City Police Department. It's a publicly available data set, and the data set was put together since 1963, and where it was kind of way into the past. So we just only consider this last 6 years of data, which was quite enough, and we did have hundreds of thousands of rows of data on this data set to work with. And as I said, this is an actively maintained data set, so it is current as of today. The methodology that we followed was pretty plain and simple. We downloaded the data set. We did ignore a few columns, because the columns or the features on the data set were with redundant data like nulls, and they were just totally blanks. Some columns were just not being updated. So the columns or these features were just blank. So we just skipped those. We didn't want to use them because they were redundant. We pre-processed these columns. We had to convert a lot of string data into meaningful values as described on this table here. And we use scripts. We did use C# for the processing. And then we used Python and its associated libraries like, the NumPy, Matplotlib, and Seaborn, and so on. So these libraries did help us in modeling, and then we went on to interpret the results. Pretty simple. What did we get? So as I said, the primary goal of any predictive modeling is to produce an accurate prediction on data that the model has not seen before. So the final data set, as described in the previous slides tables, was used. And we split the data as 75-25, 75 for training and 25 for validation or testing purposes. And the model was fitted on the training set. We were predicting on 2 classes, yes and no. That is, inside or outside premises, or in-out premises. And the classifier made a total of 40,319 predictions, or it looked into so many various cases. And the classifier predicted 22,386 times a true positive and 11,196 times a true negative. So we achieved an accuracy rate of 83.3% on our predictions, and with a high precision of 84.5%. The model recall rate was 89.5%. We did plot a ROC curve, which is pretty much looking good. And the AUC, or the area under the curve, was 0.91, where if the AUC was of 1, then it represents a perfect classifier. And we could achieve 0.91 on the AUC. So what does this really tell us? From this analysis, we could really predict if the crime occurred inside the premises or outside the premises. So with that said, what we could conclude from here. So our conclusion was pretty straightforward. A prediction model such as this can really help accurately predict location details of a crime or emergency occurring inside or outside the premise. Such predictions can help law enforcement and first responders when responding to a crime. Adequate preparations can be made by these teams when they have such information, and if they can predict ahead of time that, hey, I get a call and I can predict that this is going to be probably inside or outside the premises. As part of future work, the authors, we plan on implementing other supervised learning algorithms to compare with this logistic regression towards selecting an optimal solution. We plan on testing the algorithms on larger data sets, also creating a tool for on-site use. So one thing to note here is that we did work with only crime data or law enforcement data. So if we can amalgamate various data sets or data from various first responding teams of a city, for example, if we also got EMS data, if you got some fire services data, and we combine all of these data or data sets together, and then we work on predicting, it will be of much better use for these teams. This is just a proof of concept kind of way, and we would like to note this particular limitation in our work. With this, I would like to conclude this presentation. Thank you all for listening into this, and hope you'll enjoyed it. Feel free to contact us for any clarifications. A big shout out to all the first responders across the world for their great service that they do, and would like to thank them and really appreciate all of the work. We also like to thank you all for listening in, said earlier, and enjoy the rest of the conference, and feel free to contact us for anything, any questions that you have. Thank you. Goodbye.